You can feel it, right? This is one of those Chargers weeks where one headline doesn't stay in its lane. It spills into everything. Today we've got a league decision that hits like a hammer. An offense that finally showed signs of life after weeks of getting dragged. Another offensive line scare at the worst possible time. And a young defensive star who's basically screaming, "Pay me." If you're Bolt fam, buckle up. Hit like, subscribe, and tell me this right now in the comments. Are the Chargers building real playoff momentum, or are we just getting teased at the worst possible time? And don't click away, because one of these stories is going to split the fan base. Half the people will call it necessary, the other half will call it unacceptable, and both sides will have a point. Let's start with the kind of news that doesn't just sting. It can mess with seeding, matchups, and confidence. The NFL suspended linebacker Denzel Perryman for 2 games without pay after an unnecessary hit on Cowboys wide receiver Ryan Flournoy. And the scary part is the league's wording. This wasn't framed like one bad moment. The NFL described the action as coming from repeated violations of rules intended to protect player health and safety, including during the Cowboys game. That's a label you do not want attached to your name, especially right now. I get it. Perryman plays with edge. He sets a tone. He's the type of linebacker who makes you feel something when the defense is on the field. But when the league decides you're a repeat offender, the margin for error disappears. Officials flagged him for unnecessary roughness for delivering contact to the helmet area, and the moment even sparked a brief scuffle. After the game, Perryman pushed back online, suggesting he spoke with the player he hit, like he wanted everyone to know it wasn't malicious. Here's the problem. The NFL doesn't judge you only by Sunday. Perryman has history. Back in 2021, he was fined $55,000 for using his helmet to hit Jalen Hurts. In 2023, he was suspended 2 games for repeated violations involving initiating contact with his helmet. So when people ask, why so harsh now? That's your answer. It's not just one hit. It's the file. And even though he's free to appeal, the immediate reality is brutal. He's out for Week 17 against the Houston Texans and Week 18 on the road at Denver, which could be a game with the AFC West up for grabs. So what does that mean for the Chargers on the field? It means the linebacker room has to hold the line without one of its tone setters. You're leaning on Deion Henley and Del'Shawn Phillips, and you're asking Troy Dye and Marlowe Wax to play bigger roles next to them. And that's where discipline becomes everything. Against Houston and Denver, you can't survive on emotion. You need clean fits, clean tackles, and perfect communication on 3rd down. One blown gap becomes a long drive. One long drive becomes a tired defense. And a tired defense becomes points you can't afford to give up. But while everyone's arguing about the suspension, there's another storyline that might decide whether this team can actually make noise in January, because the offense finally looked like the offense we've been begging for. Sunday was different. Justin Herbert hit 300-plus passing yards for the first time in over 2 months. And the ground game actually mattered, with Omarion Hampton having his most efficient runs per carry since Week 4 against the Giants. And yes, I hear the disclaimer. It was the Cowboys. Dallas has been banged up in the secondary, rotating pieces, and their defensive line has struggled to generate consistent pressure. Fair. But Bolt fam, you know what else is fair? When something has been stuck for weeks, you celebrate proof that it can function again. What stood out most was how Herbert navigated the pocket. PFF's charting credited Dallas with 23 pressures, but the quality didn't feel the same. Herbert wasn't constantly getting battered, and he wasn't even sacked. That's massive for an offense that's been living in survival mode. He stepped up, slid, reset, and delivered. That pocket movement unlocked explosive plays, like the deep strike to Quentin Johnston, one of those throws that makes a defense panic and makes a fan base exhale. That's how you create belief. And the approach felt smarter. Instead of staring down the home run ball and waiting for a miracle, the Chargers let drives come to them. They stacked completions in the 5 to 15-yard range, moved the chains, forced the defense to defend the whole field, and then, once the defense relaxed, they uncorked an explosive pass or hit a big Hampton run. It was almost Tom Brady Patriots-like in rhythm. Take what's there, punish overreactions, and keep the quarterback clean. It wasn't flashy for the sake of flashy, it was controlled aggression. Here's why it matters. If the Chargers are going to win in the playoffs, they can't live on Herbert 100 to 200 yard outputs. They need more 250 to 300 yard games. They need an offense that can win multiple ways when the weather gets ugly and the stage gets loud. Hampton will help in cold AFC football, and the rookie looked much more comfortable than he did in his first couple weeks back. But don't get too comfortable, because the stress test is immediate. The next 2 weeks are loaded with nasty defensive back matchups. Derek Stingley, Kamari Lassiter, Patrick Surtain, Riley Moss, and both Houston and Denver can make you pay if you let their pass rush tee off. We can't declare the passing offense back like it's a fact, but we finally saw a blueprint that can work. And speaking of what can ruin a blueprint, you want proof of what can derail an offense in one snap? Losing tackles. And guess what happened again in Arlington? The Chargers left Texas with a dominant victory, but they also left with another offensive line injury that could shape everything that follows. Starting left tackle Jamari Salyer went down with a hamstring injury on the opening drive. On the opening drive, Bolt fam. Austin Deculus had to replace him for the rest of the game, and credit where it's due. The Chargers managed the lineup change well and still finished with 300 yards passing and another 142 on the ground. But you don't get to ignore the warning sign just because the final score looks pretty. Zoom out. The tackle situation has been a revolving door all season. Rashawn Slater went down with a season-ending knee injury in training camp, and ever since then it's been mix and match. Different guys taking snaps at left tackle, the lineup constantly changing, and the Chargers still trying to win games that actually matter. That's not just next man up. That's surviving chaos while trying to keep your franchise quarterback upright. Now the question is, what happens if Salyer can't go against Houston? He's the Chargers' best pass-blocking option at left tackle, and the Texans bring one of the best defensive fronts in the NFL. They allow the third lowest offensive success rate in the league, and they're sixth in sack rate. Meanwhile, Herbert has been sacked 49 times this season. That's the collision course. If Salyer can't protect the edge, the plan changes. Deculus may not have the same ceiling in pass protection, but he's arguably a better run blocker, especially in space. That could push the Chargers toward runs outside the tackles to use the athleticism he brings and what left guard Zion Johnson can do on the move. And regardless of who starts, you're probably seeing more heavy personnel packages, extra blockers, chips, help, and an offense designed to survive waves of pressure. Because after Houston, it's Denver. Another defense that's second in the NFL in success rate allowed and sack rate. This is where coaching becomes chess, not checkers. Harbaugh and his staff have to balance protecting Herbert today and protecting Salyer's long-term health with the playoffs looming and seeding scenarios still alive. And while that sounds stressful, here comes the twist that should fire you up. Because on the other side of the ball, there's a player turning into a full-blown nightmare for offenses and a full-blown problem for the salary cap. Tuipulotu has been the best player on a Chargers defense that includes Derwin James, Khalil Mack, and 2021 first-round pick Odafe Oweh. Taken in the second round of the 2023 draft, Tuli has emerged as one of the best young edge rushers in football with a breakout 2025. Against Dallas, he did it again. A sack and a fumble recovery. He's up to 13.5 sacks on the year, and he was already 8th in the NFL in total pressures heading into Sunday. At 23 years old, his ceiling is ridiculous, and the scary part is, it doesn't even look like he's done growing. Now here's the business part. Because he was a second-round pick, there's no fifth-year option. The 2026 season is the last year on his contract, and if the Chargers are smart, they strike an extension before that season even begins. You don't let this drag. You don't let the price explode. And after another standout performance, the question becomes the number. Aiden Hutchinson signed a 4-year, $180 million contract. George Karlaftis signed a 4-year, $88 million deal in a similar position. Nick Bonito signed a 4-year, $106 million extension after a breakout third season that's very similar to what Tuli is doing now. The market always goes up, and Tuli has done far more than Karlaftis had done when he signed, so a 4-year, $88 million deal would feel insulting. At this point, 4 years and $110 million might be the floor. And it wouldn't be shocking if the Chargers go higher. A 5th year could even be in play because of his age, and that's where the total number can start sounding wild on paper while still making sense for what he brings. So now, Bolt fam, everything is on the table. You've got a defense that has to play smarter without Perryman for 2 massive games. You've got an offense that finally showed a blueprint for playoff-level football, but now has to prove it against elite secondaries. You've got an offensive line that keeps getting tested at the worst time of the year, and you've got a young star forcing the front office to make a big money decision sooner than later. So I'm asking you straight, which storyline matters most right now? The suspension, the offensive awakening, the tackle injury, or paying Tuli before the price skyrockets? Drop your take in the comments and argue it out like real Bolt fam. If you're feeling the powder blue energy right now, prove it. Make your case like a coach, like a GM, like somebody who actually watches the trenches. And if you want daily Chargers coverage with emotion, honesty, and real football talk, hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Let's ride.